One NBA star was so dominant that he broke over 10 backboards before he retired. Another's dirty play flipped a championship series on its head. One even smelled so bad he cleared out a locker room. These are the NBA players who forced rule changes, rewriting the rule book in the league's most emotional, dramatic moments. Our first story begins with a quiet six-man turned superstar. In 2012, James Harden went from averaging just 9.9 points to an explosive 25.9 points per game after a trade to Houston. His sudden leap raised eyebrows. Was he just that good? Or was something else going on? Soon, fans and officials noticed Harden's secret weapon, an overpowered move nobody could stop. When defenders tried to contest his drives, Harden would hook their arm with his, locking them in, and then act like he was fouled. He made the referees call a foul on the defender every time. It was as if Harden found a cheat code. The league grew suspicious. Harden was suddenly attempting nearly 10 free throws a game. Far more than other stars. Night after night, he'd tangle up defenders and stroll to the free throw line. It was effective and infuriating. Finally, in 2017, the NBA had enough. They introduced the Harden rule. If an offensive player initiates contact by hooking or overtly forcing a foul, it's no longer a shooting foul. No easy free points. Harden's clever trick had forced a midseason rule clarification, closing the loophole. Harden showed how bending the rules could make a player unstoppable. But what happens when a player's weakness becomes a rival's best weapon? The answer, one giant struggle that changed the game. Enter 2001 Shaq, a 7'1", 324-pound colossus. In his prime, Shaquille O'Neal was so dominant that nothing could stop him in the paint. He was shattering backboards, literally. In fact, Shaq broke 2 NBA backboards as a rookie, among 19 backboards and rims destroyed in his career. The NBA had to install stronger hoops just to contain him. But this Goliath had one fatal flaw: free throws. Shaq was a dismal 52% free throw shooter. Teams schemed to exploit it, deploying the notorious hack-a-Shaq strategy. Players literally grabbed him on purpose, not to stop a dunk, but to send him to the line. Put Shaq at the stripe, and odds were he'd hit maybe one. It was ugly, but it worked. Imagine being fouled every time you touched the ball. Games slowed to a crawl. Fans sat through endless free throws. Some games dragged over 3 hours.
People are saying, as they immediately have a hack-a-Shaq call,
Even home fans started booing their team for employing the hack-a-Shaq strategy. It was painful for everyone, especially Shaq. One day, Shaq snapped. Frustrated and humiliated, he stormed into Commissioner David Stern's office. He slammed the door like a 300-pound wrecking ball and roared, "Next time somebody hack-a-Shaqs me, I'll take 15-20 games off. After I knock them out." The threat was real. Shaq was ready to throw punches to change a rule. And trust me, you don't want that smoke. So do yourself a favor, like this video and subscribe. Because if Big Diesel has to come convince you, he might dunk you through a hoop instead. Shaq's fury got the league's attention. While Stern didn't rewrite the rulebook overnight, the outcry was heard. By 2016, the NBA finally took action. They outlawed intentional off-ball fouls in the last 2 minutes of each quarter. Now, if you hack a poor shooter away from the play at crunch time, the fouled team gets a free throw and possession. It wasn't a complete fix. Teams could still hack earlier in the game, but it stopped the worst end-of-game slog. Shaq's struggle forced the league to protect its entertainment value. The big man changed the game, not with finesse, but by exposing a loophole and all but breaking the sport. And at least Shaq never played dirty to get his way. The same can't be said for our next case. Up next, a player who caused not 1 but 2 rule changes in a single season and nearly derailed a superstar's career in the process. Most role players toil in obscurity, but Zaza found a bizarre way into NBA lore. In 2017, Zaza, a solid but unremarkable center, nearly cheated his way into the All-Star game. Fans were stunned when early voting returns showed Zaza with more votes than superstars like Kawhi Leonard, DeMarcus Cousins, and Anthony Davis. Zaza was averaging just 6 points per game, a small, pathetic, embarrassing stat line compared to those All-Stars' 25-plus points. He clearly did not belong among the elite. So what on earth happened? Well, Zaza is from the country of Georgia, and the entire nation of Georgia, population 3.7 million, decided to stuff the ballot box for their hometown hero. An entire country voting for one bench player. Fans turned the All-Star vote into a meme. The NBA couldn't allow a popularity hack to overshadow deserving stars. In response, they implemented the Zaza rule, reducing the weight of fan votes to 50% and giving players and media a say. From then on, you couldn't reach All-Star status just by fan frenzy. You actually had to deserve it. Zaza's near miss forced the league to safeguard its All-Star integrity. But Zaza wasn't done. Just a few months later, on a much bigger stage, he made a move that sparked outrage across the league. It's the 2017 West Finals, Spurs versus Warriors. The Spurs, led by Kawhi Leonard, came out on fire in Game 1. In the mid-third quarter, they led by 25 points, poised to upset the mighty Warriors. The crowd in Oakland was nervously quiet until it happened.
Von Pachulia. Leonard fires from the corner. And he's in pain again in front of the Spurs bench.
Kawhi rises for a corner jump shot and lands on Zaza's foot in an instant. The Spurs' hope vanished. Kawhi hobbled off, done for the game, eventually done for the series. That 25-point lead, gone. The Warriors roared back to win the game and swept the series 4-0, with Kawhi helplessly on the sidelines. Was it a dirty play? Zaza had slid under Kawhi's landing space, a move many deemed intentional. The incident was the last straw. The very next season, the NBA explicitly tightened the rules on defenders crowding a shooter's landing zone. This unofficially became known as the second Zaza rule. Referees could now call a flagrant foul for reckless closeouts, hit the offender with hefty fines, even suspension. The league sent a message: take out a star and you'll pay the price. Zaza Pachulia, a journeyman player, managed to force 2 rule changes in 1 year. One to stop an all-star voting fiasco and one to protect players from undercutting injuries. Talk about an unlikely legacy. Remarkably, Zaza isn't the only Golden State Warrior linked to a rule tweak. His former teammate, a pretty well-known scorer, also stretched the rules to his advantage. On to Kevin Durant, one of the most gifted scorers ever, and for a time, one of the sneakiest. Early in his career with OKC, KD discovered a cheeky move to exploit defenders. It's called the Ripthrough. Here's how it works. Durant would face up his defender, ball in hands. As the defender reached or held an arm out, KD would violently swing his arms upward through the defender's arm, as if starting a shot. Whistle, foul on the defender every time. And Durant, the walking cheat code, would head to the line for easy free throws. It was technically within the rules, there was contact, but everyone knew Durant was gaming the system. Fans and players alike felt it was unfair baiting. I mean, how do you guard a 6'10" sharpshooter who can just flail into your arm and get free points? By 2012, the NBA adjusted the rule. Rip-through fouls would no longer earn free throws. Instead of a shooting foul, refs now call it on the floor as a common foul, side out of bounds. The reward was removed. Durant and others like Kobe and D. Wade who used the move could no longer rack up points at the line with this trick. Of course, crafty scorers will always push limits. Even after the change, players like Durant kept trying to draw those rip-through fouls. And James Harden, remember him, still tangles arms whenever he can. Old habits die hard. But the rule change did curb one of the more cynical scoring hacks. Not all game-changing moments come from crafty tricks or dirty fouls. Some come from sheer, overwhelming dominance. For our next stories, we travel back in time to the eras of 2 legendary big men who were so good, the NBA had to rewrite the rules to contain them. In the NBA's early days, one man towered above the rest, literally. George Mikan, the league's first superstar in the 1940s and 50s, was a 6'10" giant when such height was unheard of. His dominance was so absolute that it birthed some of basketball's first rule changes. Mikan had an uncanny strategy on defense. He'd park himself right under the basket in a one-man zone, while his teammates pressed outside. When opponents shot the ball, Mikan would simply swat it away in midair before it could go in.
Stop the ball from going in the hoop. I can jump high enough.
Goaltending wasn't against the rules yet because nobody had ever done this. Mikan's instinct to bat away downward shots was so unfair, the NBA quickly introduced defensive goaltending to outlaw it. No more goalie-style blocks once the ball was on its downward trajectory. Even with goaltending banned, Mikan still dominated. He was a scoring machine with his unstoppable hook shots, leading his Minneapolis Lakers to multiple championships. So the league tried another tactic. In 1951, they widened the paint from 6 feet to 12 feet, the original Mikan rule. Because an offensive player can't stay in the lane over 3 seconds, doubling the width meant big men like Mikan had to start their moves twice as far from the hoop. The hope was to make Goliath a little more mortal. Did it stop Mikan? Not really. His scoring dipped only slightly, and he went on to win 3 more titles after the rule change. But the template was set. If a player is too dominant, change the rules. And no one embodied dominance more than the next legend, Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt was a one-man wrecking crew in the 1960s. So much so that he caused at least 3 major rule changes. There's a famous story from the 1997 All-Star Game. Wilt and Michael Jordan were chatting, debating who's more dominant. Wilt finally quipped to MJ, "They changed the rules to stop me. They changed the rules to help you." And Wilt wasn't wrong.
First, Wilt was so athletic that he found a loophole at the free throw line. He wasn't a great free throw shooter, so he'd leap from behind the line and throw the ball off the backboard to himself on purpose. He'd basically pass to himself and dunk it in one fluid motion, a guaranteed 2 points off any foul. The NBA immediately outlawed that. Players are not allowed to cross the plane of the free throw line until the ball hits the rim. That rule exists because of Wilt.
Second, Wilt would score on inbound plays by having teammates lob the ball over the backboard from out of bounds, where Wilt would grab it for an easy bucket. The league banned inbound passes over the backboard once they saw Wilt turning dead ball situations into slam dunks. Third, like Mikan, Wilt lived in the paint, so the NBA widened the lane again from 12 feet to 16 feet. This was the modern lane width we have now, all to push Wilt further out. They hoped a bigger paint would make this demigod look more mortal. Offensive goaltending. You can thank Wilt for that rule too. He was known to just guide in his teammates' shots above the cylinder, forcing a rule against it. In essence, Chamberlain was so freakishly dominant, a 7'1" scoring machine, that the NBA had to reinvent itself. Widen the court's key areas, stop players from literally playing volleyball off the rim, and take away any gimmick he found. Wilt changed basketball like no one else. And for the record, those rule changes barely slowed him down. You don't average 50 points per game in a season without breaking a few rules, or making a few in Wilt's case. Dominance on Wilt's level may never be seen again, but even the game's greatest showman, Michael Jordan, forced the NBA to adjust in one small way. Let's look at how the league quietly tweaked the rules in the late 80s to keep things fair when MJ was on the court. Michael Jordan, the NBA's ultimate superstar, you'd think Air Jordan could do whatever he wanted on the court, and mostly he did. But early in his career, Jordan was so dominant one-on-one that his team, the '87 Chicago Bulls, took advantage of an odd loophole to maximize his impact. Back then, defenses were very restricted. An NBA defender either had to guard his man or go double team. Zone defenses were illegal. So Chicago would just clear out one side of the floor. Jordan's 4 teammates would stand way up top or on the opposite side, leaving Mike entirely alone with his defender. No help could legally come without a double team. And if someone dared to cheat over, Jordan would just kick to the open man. The result? An unstoppable string of Jordan isolation plays, basically one-on-one exhibitions every night. MJ, at the peak of his athleticism, with a whole half court to toy with a helpless defender, it was like feeding a mouse to a snake. He dropped 37 points per game in 1987 doing this. Fans loved the show, but purists worried it was turning basketball into a series of glorified one-on-one battles. So the NBA quietly tweaked the rules. They implemented an isolation rule prohibiting teams from stationing all their players on one side of the floor, away from the ball. Basically, you couldn't have 3 guys just clearing out above the top of the key while one star went ISO. This forced a bit more movement and helped defense back into the game. Did it stop Jordan? Not exactly. He led the league with 35 points per game the very next season. Yeah, that rule really wrecked Michael's career. MJ kept being MJ, but the league had made its point. Even the greatest had to play within a team concept, at least a little. We've seen how play on the court led to new rules, but sometimes it's what happens off the court that forces the NBA's hand. Our next story is about a superstar whose impact went beyond basketball skills, sparking a change in the league's image. NBA rules aren't only about X's and O's. They also cover how players present themselves. And Allen Iverson, the icon of early 2000s basketball, changed league rules without even touching a ball. Iverson was the embodiment of the hip-hop generation in the NBA. Baggy jeans, oversized tees, flashy chains. He wore what he liked, expressed himself freely, and many young players followed his lead. But the NBA's old guard was not a fan. Commissioner David Stern looked at AI and others and felt the players appeared, in his words, thuggish or unprofessional. The league's image was at stake in Stern's eyes. So, in 2005, the NBA enacted a controversial dress code. Suddenly, players were forced to swap throwback jerseys and do-rags for suits and sport coats. The mandate, dress business casual.
You could wear jeans, just wear a pair of shoes and a shirt with a collar.
When arriving at games, on the bench, or at official functions, no more streetwear. It was a direct response to the Iverson-inspired fashion wave.
Don't tell me what to wear to go play basketball.
Iverson hated it. He felt it targeted players like him and tried to stifle their culture. He famously said, "Just because you put a guy in a tuxedo doesn't mean he's a good guy. Dressing like a Wall Street banker didn't change who they were." For AI, the dress code was an attack on his identity and the streets he came from. Dress code stood, and over time, players adapted. Some even embraced high fashion in response. Iverson's influence, however, was undeniable. He forced the NBA to confront a cultural clash between players' self-expression and the league's corporate image. The echoes of that battle live on every time you see a player's pregame outfit or a discussion about professionalism versus personal style in sports. That's why we have players now with their really eccentric outfits. Oh, and as a footnote, Iverson's on-court moves prompted a tweak too. His killer crossover was so deadly in part because AI would carry the ball ever so slightly on his hesitation dribble. The league actually sent referees a memo to crack down on palming violations because of Iverson. Imagine being so good at a move that the NBA has to remind refs to enforce a rule? That's Allen Iverson for you, changing the game on his terms. So much so that he even had Michael Jordan staggered. We've covered cheating, dominance, and even dress codes. For our final story, let's lighten the mood. It turns out even bad body odor can inspire a rule change. Yes, you heard that right. NBA players have different bodies than regular people, so professional athletes are world-class in many ways, but hygiene isn't always one of them. Consider the curious case of Adam Morrison, a lottery pick in 2006 who became more famous for what he didn't do in the locker room than what he did on the court. According to teammates, Morrison had a habit of not showering after practices and games. Yes, you heard that right. He'd go home reeking rather than rinse off with the team. He also chewed tobacco and spat on the locker room floor and allegedly rotated the same few unwashed polo shirts for days. Disgusting? His Charlotte Bobcats teammates certainly thought so. It got so bad that one day, veteran Gerald Wallace basically forced Morrison into the shower at the practice facility.
Problem with him not showering, true or false?
True. That was back in the day, though.
Yeah, but how'd this argument go between Gerald Wallace and Adam Morrison?
He told him to get his butt in the shower. He said, you don't take a shower here. That's what he told him to. He kept explaining, I take showers. I'm just going to go home, man. I want to go home and take my own shower in my own house. He said, man, I don't want to hear that, man. Get in there. Hey, he took that shower. I'll tell you that. Ask Gerald Wallace.
Stories like this spread, and the NBA took notice in its own way. While there isn't an official smelly player rule in the handbook, teams tightened up hygiene requirements and etiquette because of guys like Morrison. It's unwritten, but understood. You must shower, use deodorant, and generally not smell like a dumpster if you want to share a locker room. Guys cleaned up their act, because end of the day, if your funk is so bad it's an on-court disadvantage, no one wants to guard the guy who stinks. That's a problem. From the absurd to the legendary, we've seen it all. Cheats, feats, and yes, even odors, all leaving their mark on the game's rules. Basketball is constantly evolving, shaped by the brilliant and bizarre things players do. Think about it. Widened lanes, new fouls, tech reviews, dress codes. So many rules trace back to a moment in time, an emotional flashpoint caused by a player who was either too dominant, too crafty, or just too smelly for the status quo. These stories remind us that the NBA isn't just about the points or the highlights. It's about the personalities and legends who redefine the game. Every time a rule changes, it's a testament to someone who pushed the limits. It's the league saying, we've never seen this before, and we need to adjust. From Wilt Chamberlain forcing officials to literally expand the court, to James Harden causing a rewrite of the rule book in the modern era, these moments are the crossroads of creativity and competition. They're the NBA's most dramatic chapters, where a single player's impact was so profound that the rules of the game had to change forever. If you enjoyed this journey, check this video that shows the time when the entire NBA cried during the most touching moments, or the once-in-a-lifetime moments of the NBA. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. So what are you waiting for? Click it, and I will see you on the other side.